All right, guys, so we are going to start your first piece of pottery, which is a pinch pot. Just a couple of things I want you to notice. I have cut my nails off. That is not a requirement, but it is definitely a recommendation. And I've also taken off my rings. I've left my wash on. You shouldn't be getting clay up in here, but definitely remove any rings. That is a requirement. And I would recommend that you keep your nails short while you're doing pottery. If you have fake nails, I worry about ruining your nails with the pottery. So, you know, I would keep them short. It just makes it easier to clean and you don't accidentally scratch up your pottery so much. So I've got a chunk of clay here, and this is what I'm gonna use to make my first piece of pottery, which is a pinch pot. You'll get chunks about this size. I'm gonna start by taking some of this off. This is a little bit more than I wanna use. So I'm gonna go like this, and I am just going to start kind of kneading this into a ball, kind of like you did when you were a kid and you played Play-Doh. Okay, and once I have it kind of roughly ball shaped, then I'm going to start rolling it again, probably like you did as a kid playing Play-Doh. I'm also trying to keep my sleeves pushed up. You don't want to get this on your clothes. It's not going to be the end of the world if you do, but it'll be better off if you don't. Now, you don't need to spend forever making this perfectly smooth, because in the end, you're going to end up putting more cracks and stuff into it once you start making into a piece of pottery. But you do want to start out with something relatively smooth because it'll just help you. So these areas where I've got like a pretty deep crack right here, I am going through and kind of using my finger to blend those out a little bit. Just because, like I said, it'll make it easier for myself later on. The more work you can do up front, the less you're stressing out towards the end of the project trying to get it all nice and smooth. So I have my ball. Next thing I need to do is I need to flatten one side of it. So I'm going to set it down on the table, and I'm just going to flatten the base of it like this. So now I've got one flat side. But when I set it here, it doesn't roll away on me. So I have this. Now there's a couple ways you can go about doing this. You can do this with your thumb or your fingers. I personally prefer to go in with my thumb, but some people would rather go in, especially if you have longer nails, would go in with their knuckle kind of like this. But I go in like this and just kind of poke a hole straight down. You don't want to go all the way through. Like, you don't want to poke through the bottom, but you do want to make a pretty good deep hole there. So then you're just going to kind of, and this is why it's called a pinch pot, you're just going to kind of pinch. So I'm going around slowly. And as I go, I am just kind of pinching a little bit each time. You don't want to like sink your thumb into this and do like a really, really hard pinch. You just want to slowly get the opening bigger and bigger until you get something that like resembles a bowl. If you just go in and like pinch it really hard, you're just going to have like a huge dent in it, and that's not really what you want. So I've got a little bit more room, so I can use both now. And you'll see as I'm going, I'm getting some little cracks like this. We're gonna deal with those later, but you do kind of want to be aware of them as you're making them. And this is the point, once you've got it to about something like this, that you need to start deciding what your shape is going to be. Are you gonna try to make it like a tall kind of vase? Do you want it to be like an open bowl? What sort of shape are you going for? So if you wanted it to be more of an open bowl, then when you pinch, you would probably start kind of like pulling outward a little bit. Whereas if you wanted it to be like taller, then as you pinch, you would kind of pull up a little bit. So I'm not gonna make mine super tall or super wide. I'm gonna open it up a little bit, because first of all, right now, some people will stop right now. If I put this in the kiln, this will explode. And I say that a lot when I'm talking about pieces of pottery, and I don't mean it's gonna blow the school up, but I do mean that your pottery will come out in probably 100 pieces. So you want to make sure that the walls of your pottery are not this thick. This is too thick. If water, so the clay is wet, if it doesn't dry out completely and I put it in the kiln, the water inside the walls of the pottery will turn into steam while it is a piece of pottery. And that steam's got to go somewhere. And so it goes somewhere by cracking open your pottery into a million pieces so that it can escape. So you do want to make sure that the walls of your pottery are not too thick. If you have any questions about it, if you're not sure, just come ask me. I can definitely tell you. So now I'm going and I'm widening this a little bit. Because like I said, I don't want it to look like this. Like I don't want it to be curved into the top. I want it to be like at least a little bit open. I'm not making like a full-on like bowl like you could eat cereal out of, but I do want it to be like a little bit open at the top. The main thing with this clay is that you want to work slowly. You don't want to overdo it and try to work very, very quickly with it, because it will crack. Like I'm already getting some cracks here just working with it slowly. So imagine how much more that would be cracking if I was trying to move it very quickly. And as you work, you will find if you prefer to have it sitting on the table working, if you prefer to pick it up. What I don't want you to do is set it on a paper towel like this, because paper towels, even super crappy paper towels like these, are meant to absorb water. And what that's going to do is it's going to start soaking the water from the bottom of your pottery and just soaking it down. And once it gets dry, you can't work on it anymore. So especially if you are planning on working on it over the course of a couple of days, you definitely don't want to be setting it on a paper towel. Now, if we're trying to get something to dry out quickly, sometimes I will wrap it in paper towels as a way of getting it to dry out. But for working, you don't want it on a paper towel. Also, make sure when you are setting it on the table that you are picking it up every so often so it doesn't stick to the table, because wet clay will stick to the table. So pick it up every 2 or 3 minutes. Okay, so I'm relatively happy with this shape. It's fine, it's whatever. The walls are not super thick. They're a little thicker. You could go thinner than this for sure. You don't want to go super thin. Like I've got some kids who get so stressed out about it like blowing up that they'll make the walls of their pottery like this thin. And that is going to break for a different reason. It's just going to be too fragile. So you don't want to go super, super thick. You don't want to go super, super thin. As you're working, if you want to call me over and have me look at it, like I say, I'll be happy to do that for you. So I have a shape here. It's fine. You'll see again, I've got lots of cracking happening up here. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to get my little water and I'm just going to tap my finger in it. This, you do not want to add much water to your clay. It will make it a disaster. But tap a little bit of water just so your finger has like a little bit of water on it, but you don't want it to be like dripping. And then just kind of start going like this. And start smoothing out those cracks. This can get real muddy real quick. So don't overdo it. Just a tiny little bit will do. Okay, so I've smoothed it out a little bit. It's still not perfect, and that's fine because I'm not really done. And I don't want to spend so much time smoothing it out right now and then end up messing it up again later. But this is giving me something that I can kind of work with. So from here, you have to decide what you're going to do. What is this? Is this something to keep bobby pins in? Is it decorative? Are you going to put flowers in it? Like, what is the purpose of this thing that you have made? And then you need to make the rest of your design based on that. So you could go with something like this and you kind of add some designs to the outside. You could also do something more like I've seen where people will do something like this instead and turn it into like the mouth of an animal and have like eyes and stuff like attached to it. You can do something like that. You can make a little lid for it if you wanted to with some extra clay. You can add, like I had somebody one year who did like, rolled up a bunch of little balls and had these around the edges. Kind of like this all the way around. You could do something like that. If you do want to attach stuff, when you're working with super wet clay, it attaches pretty well. If you want to come back the next day and attach stuff, one of the projects we do will be entirely about attachments and it will be made completely of attached pieces. This one, if you're just attaching small things, you can usually just kind of like add a tiny little bit of water. I'm gonna get a tool here. And the general thing to keep in mind is that smooth clay doesn't really stick to smooth clay. So you just kind of want to like rough it up a little bit. So I'm just kind of going like that and making it, if it'll focus, making it a little bit rough and then kind of sticking it on like this and then blending them together a little bit. You don't want to skip the blending step. You do want to make sure that there's something kind of holding them on there. The same thing if you wanted to attach something down here on your pottery. So Let me roll out a piece here. So if let's turn it up like this so you can see a little bit better. I'm gonna end up just flattening out one side over here. If I wanted to attach this to kind of make like a little stripe around it, I could. And like I say, when the clay is wet, it tends to stick pretty well. This feels like it's sticking pretty well, but I can guarantee you, once it dries, it won't be wet anymore and it'll just like pop right off. So again, what you wanna do is you wanna add a little bit more water to help it stick better, and then just kind of like rough it up so that it has a little bit more to kind of like adhere to. And you don't necessarily have to do any sort of attachment at all. You could carve a design using one of these little tools. You could carve some stuff in here. Not sure how well I can do carving upside down, but so I carved, you can sort of see it, maybe sort of, you can kind of see that I've carved a little heart in there. You can do stuff like that. I wouldn't necessarily recommend doing just like this, or if you're going to do that, you can do that, but just kind of like tap it afterwards, because sometimes when you do that, you'll get little pieces that are sticking up, which is fine when the clay is wet, but then when the clay is dry, they will be so sharp that they will cut you. So if you're just gonna like carve like this, just like straight lines, make sure you tap it afterwards to make sure that there are not any rough edges sticking up. So you can add designs however you would like to add designs. If you have a specific design in mind that you'd like to ask me about, you're welcome to do that. The process for this one is that you roll a ball, you flatten one side of it, you stick your thumbs or your fingers down in the middle, and then pinch all the way around the edges until you have some sort of bowl, vase, pot of some kind. After that point, it is up to you where you take it. It doesn't matter to me what your final design is, as long as you have a final design. It should not just be a bowl with nothing on it. Now you can add designs with the glaze. Glaze is like paint. We'll get to that part eventually. So you could, just make something simple and then plan on adding the designs later with the paint. But, you might want to have at least something other than just a straight bowl. Some sort of, something. When you are done with everything, take this off, you're gonna flip it over. First of all, you're gonna go back and smooth out all of these things that might have happened as you were working. You're gonna get it completely done. When you are 100% happy with it, you are going to carve your initials in the bottom. And this is what I was talking about with using these things to carve. You see I've got like little pieces sticking up here. I wanna make sure some of those I can just take off, but I wanna tap that down to make sure that it's completely flat. So I've carved my initials in the bottom, and then you're gonna set it on the shelf that is ready to be fired. And then after that, it will come back to you, hard as a rock, ready to be painted. Then you'll put it back in after you've painted it with glaze, and you will get it back complete and pretty and colorful and everything else that you have done to it. So that is the process for a pinch pot. If you have any questions or you need help along the way, or you want to know if something is too thick or too thin, just come up to me in class and ask me. I'll be more than happy to tell you, no, that's way too thick, you need to keep thinning it out, or stop right there, you've already gone a little bit too thin, or that design's not gonna work, or this isn't gonna stick in the kiln, or whatever. I will be more than happy to do that. I just want you to be aware of what the process is so you can kind of get started and then get to the questions as they come up. So let me know if I can do anything to help you. Otherwise, once you have completed this video and completed the section in your journal that has the fill in the blanks, you're gonna move on to your pottery sketch. Once you have finished your pottery sketch and kind of cleared it with me, then you are ready to get started on your pinch pot.